Alliance Evolutions Over the Course of Short-Term Dynamic Psychotherapy, a Case Study. By Luc Michel, Ueli Kramer, and Yves de Roten. Part 2. Results. Therapy phases. Using notes taken during the treatment sessions as a basis, the therapist sought to describe the evolution of the psychotherapy in function of the themes and relational movements, alliance and transference, throughout the psychotherapy. This work resulted in the description of 4 successive phases of the treatment. Therefore, the status of what follows is the subjective interpretation of the therapist and first author. We first describe the therapy process from the clinical viewpoint from the therapist's perspective, and then report the results from scales. Phase 1. Initial stage, sessions 1 to 4. In the first few sessions, Julia appeared rather inhibited. With women, we talk more easily than with men. The therapist told her that she hadn't made things easier by choosing a male therapist. For her, men seem more knowledgeable, which takes the therapist back to her early years marked by a fairly positive paternal transference, which she tried to attain this phallic force which women to a certain extent lack. She bears in mind those women who are not as ambitious as she is. In fact, this is exactly what she would like to have at the moment, a female boss. She says she needs such a female role model. She compares herself with her mother, who never worked full-time. My father did little at home. There was one bathroom for the men, her father and her brother, and another for the women, her mother and the 2 daughters. She frequently referred to her mother during the first sessions. She doesn't really listen to me, as if she weren't really interested in what I do, she says, but I don't doubt that she loves me. She sadly recalled her parents' divorce, seemingly disillusioned. It came as a complete surprise. She realized that it was the world upside down with the parents leaving the family home and the teenagers staying behind. She appeared uneasy in the therapist's presence, who reminded her of her father with whom she had trouble talking about her feelings. Was it because she thinks the therapist holds a certain knowledge, like her professors who exclude her from certain decisions against her will? The therapist pointed out the connection between this distress and such decisions as her parents' divorce, when she also felt excluded. Then other memories came back, her departure for another country at the age of 16, and the anger she felt because she had the impression that nobody took her opinion seriously. The therapist linked this moment with where she is right now in the process of psychotherapy, for she has to take part in deciding whether to undertake psychotherapy and in which environment, session 4. Julia also recalled her return 2 years later, when she was 18 and her parents' separation. Here the first signs of sadness become apparent, and for the first time, she said what she felt like when she was faced with a broken home. This led her to become aware of the fact that she has been blocking out her sadness. The therapist interpreted what she had been told so far as if the separations weren't important, and that she had spent all her childhood and adolescence feeling sad about other things without really knowing why, just as she doesn't know why she is now seeking treatment. After a moment of silence, she said that some years ago, she read a novel that made her cry floods of tears for no real reason. She cannot remember the name of the book. Phase 2. Concerning self-control, sessions 5 to 17. In the following session, 5, she referred to her sister's various illnesses that upset the whole family. There's a contrast between her sister and herself, as she is in good health and has no problems. This reminds her of her mother, who, when Julia was thinking of seeking treatment, told her that in her opinion Julia did not need to see a psychotherapist. The therapist notes how difficult it must be to accept her sadness and to talk about it. Will he agree to see her, or will he just minimize the situation, as her mother did? In the next session, 6, she goes back to the difficulty she has to admit that she is not well and needs attention. Then memories come back to the time when she found it so difficult to find her place when for the first time she moved to a foreign town at the age of 4. If ever she should return there, she would like to visit the places of her childhood, including her school. As the latter has been pulled down, she wonders if this is not really like a whole part of my life which has disappeared, and this upsets her. She was starting to find it hard to attend these sessions, and cries and realizes just how much she has suffered and how much she has kept bottled up. Shaken by the emotions aroused, she comes back to the choice between sacrificing a career or a family, which she sees as not only inevitable, but also unbearable. Does her professional choice have something to do with her father? Will her whole therapy consist of settling something with her father? The first break in psychotherapy sessions lasts 2 weeks, which was a relief to her. 8. She brings back the subject of her career and comparisons with her father. Her own ambition is put in question. At 18, she found herself alone, as she refused to return to her parents. In fact, she remembers that it wasn't so easy and that sometimes she drank too much at the weekend. Was this to forget her solitude? She found it hard to attend the therapy sessions. Don't we always talk about the same things? The therapist tried to work on her resistance to facing up to certain suppressed effects. She recalls images of this period, remembering that her parents' divorce seemed to be the end of the world to her, a dramatic separation. She is beginning to feel furious with her father for leaving for another woman. In the following session, 10, she said that she found that she had been over-emotional. She once again set up her defensive system. She talked about memories of her departure and her life in Canada, how she feared talking about it at school. Then she remembered that one evening, with a school friend, she got into the school and set fire to the board with all the holidays marked on it, so that time would stand still. But what she particularly found hard at that time enabled her to evoke the positive sides of this uprooting. She gave a lot of thought to her relationship with her father. He suggested that she could spend her holidays with her stepmother and him, but she hesitated. Can she bear his traits of character, which she knows she has too? Several times, she spoke of the conflictual aspect that frequently comes to the fore in her relationship with her father. From now on, several sessions will focus on this relationship. A certain inhibition is becoming apparent, and a symptom comes to light, her phobia of driving since she returned to her hometown. She is terrified of running over someone. The therapist points out the aggressive element. As he sees it, she also needs to be driven now, whereas she has always said that she could manage alone. She becomes aware of the repetitive aspect of her journeys, playing an active part in such. This makes her think of material with regard to her own sexuality and the passive position in which she feels she is during sexual relations. Here too, there is no medial position. Is a positive paternal opinion, as in this case the therapist, so necessary for one to be loved and to love oneself? She explained how uneasy she feels when she weeps during therapy, 14. The therapist asked her if it was really necessary to do everything right to be loved, and need she really hold back her tears here as she does with her father. Identifying herself with her father means having few emotions and expressing even fewer. The place where I always used to cry, she says, was at the gynecologist. Is this specific to her female identity? 15. A fascinating discussion with experienced colleagues strengthened her ambition to continue in research. 17. The therapist pointed out to her how pleased she was to sit at the same table as her superiors. She was annoyed with the therapist for linking her pleasure, in this case, to her father, as if the therapist told her linking him to something detracts something from him. The therapist's remarks made her doubt about herself, like those of her father. She feels she is her father's daughter because she is identifying herself with him. The therapist intervened and wondered if she could choose a path because her father chose it before her or because it is the best for her. She was affected by these words. Phase 3. Concerning greediness. Sessions 18 to 23. Her contacts with her father are improving. 18. A reconciliation, which leads her to tell herself that she needs to make some compromises regarding her career. Financial problems arise concerning the therapy, once again making a link with her father and the question of money. She wanted to assume her responsibilities, but after a period of anal self-control, she shows far more oral veracity. She talked about her relationship with food, her craving for sweet things, which she no longer wishes to limit. This hunger that also makes her remember conflicts with her mother, who try to keep her greediness in check. As the therapist mentions her greediness, her fear of going out, the question of security, money, and food, she thinks of an apple which her mother used to put in her school bag, just in case. Her mother was not necessarily there, but her apple was the very same security that helps her feel close to the little baby in her who's speaking. She also mentioned that on leaving the session, she often goes to buy a little bun across the road, but won't today. The therapist told her that she doesn't need to go because she's been able to talk about her greediness. Moreover, just before a 2-week break, 20. In the next session, she admitted that she did in fact buy a bun when she left, as she was too scared of being hungry. Tense, with taut muscles in the nape of her neck, she talked again about her worries about her future. She feels that she is once again experiencing the sensations and emotions of her childhood and is surprised that she wants, maybe even needs, to see the therapist again. What is troubling her is that she is not unique and that after her, there will be other patients. We talked about her greed and her desire to be exclusive, drawing a parallel between her mother's apartment, where she sleeps every time she goes to see her, and the therapist's office. She said she had trouble sleeping in her mother's flat with her boyfriend. This opened a discussion after the mention of her greediness, focusing on her rivalry and leading her to question her femininity and her sexuality. The therapist and the client then talked about the competition between her mother and herself. Feelings of incest and rivalry are uncovered. It is she who is kept in touch with her father, whereas her mother broke off all relations after the divorce, 21. Once this issue comes to light, a certain resistance becomes apparent, and she starts to complain about being forced to come for therapy. Now she can accept that before they divorced, her parents also had a relationship. This leads to the question of her hopes of the choice of a husband, marriage, a family. The idea of being together, then separating, enables the therapist to remind her that the end of the psychotherapy is no longer so far off. She came to the following session with her first dream, 22. I was having a baby. We were on a walk. I forget to feed the baby, but he doesn't cry. After 2 days, he starts crying. I wrap him up in aluminum foil to keep him warm. This dream reminds her of her desire to be pregnant, with images of larvae representing newborn babies. She thinks of breastfeeding, which creates a bond with the baby, this irreplaceable feature of womanhood. The therapist also recognizes her in this baby, who is left in her charge. Is this a part of herself which she is dealing with now? This interpretation made her weep a lot, arousing sensations and feelings that she described as coming from afar. It is both a memory of eating anything when she was very small and other memories of having to eat when her mother did not come home at lunchtime and she had to get her meal herself. This expresses her sadness at certain times in her life when she felt an emotion without associating it with a representation. For instance, this week she cried a lot, quite out of proportion because a colleague was leaving. This reminds her of her loneliness, particularly the fact that her boyfriend lives in another town and that she sees him only at weekends, which until now she has never mentioned. The therapist comes back to the baby in the dream, her greediness, her wish to be held in someone's arms, and the therapist and the client's upcoming separation. That makes her think of an umbrella because she wants to distance herself from the wet tears. Then come the sadness and reproaches that the therapist will be leaving her, for she likens this to a mother who used to leave her in a nursery rather than hold her in her arms, as if she could at last admit how much she had suffered. Thinking again of the photo album the nursery gave her, she speaks about the first separation when she was 4 to 5 years old after the family moved home. Shortly after, wards, she heard that her infant school teacher had died. The therapist linked this death to the disappearance of her childhood memories that she has repressed until now, and to a 2-week interruption in therapy sessions, 23. Phase 4. Talking about the end, sessions 24 to 34. When she returns, 24, she says that she feels that something has changed in the consulting room, which led the therapist to relate this to the separation and the changes that she is going through. At this point, she meets a teacher who she finds fascinating as she is both the mother of several children and very successful career-wise. In a burst of self-identification, she sees her as a role model. Time passes. Then the client spoke about separation and the desire of being pregnant comes up again. The therapist links this to the baby she dreamt about, to herself. Once again, she misses a session for professional reasons. Then she returns and comments on the fact that the throw on the sofa has been changed and other alterations have been made in the therapist's office, 27. The therapist pointed out that obviously quite a number of things have happened in her absence. After criticizing all these changes, she thinks of her father, who she realizes now also hesitates from time to time in certain situations. She sees changes in her relationship with her father, who seems to be less idealized. She comes back to all the current transformations in the office, which greatly disconcert her. She realizes that she needs a stable place, probably because this is the last session before the separation of the summer holiday. She understands that this office has its own life, that it exists even when she is not there. She can link this with what happened with her parents when she was away. Other changes occurred in the family within a very short lapse of time. That was when she decided to take up an academic career, thus following in her father's footsteps. At the time of the separation, the desire to have a child is intense and urgent. How can she remain a woman and have plans for a career, yet still mourning self-fulfillment since I thought that I had everything, but I'm a woman? She is working on her ideals, on negotiating with her boyfriend, but becoming somewhat conflictual in her plans. She commented in session 32 on the fact that for the first time, she had come to the session by bike and was proud of herself. The therapist succeeded, she tells him, signifying by this the end of the therapy. The therapist reminded her of this image, and she replied that she now knows how to get around and that the therapist can now let her manage alone. This was followed by a series of memories about her father, to whom she wanted to show that she had grown up. The bike was in fact her father's birthday present. She is now less afraid of following the route she has taken and less afraid of driving. When she turns to the discussions with her boyfriend, she mentions that they have decided to wait a while before having child. It's not absolutely necessary for her to do exactly the same thing her parents did. In the final session, 33, she comes back to the image of the bike. The small wheels have been taken off. Is this a coincidence? She has worked hard on her thesis and carried out the last experiment. She has projects and has at last managed to tell her father about her wedding. He took this well, and things seem to be sorting themselves out for the table layout for the wedding meal. It is my parents' problem to decide whether or not to come to the wedding together, and I do not have to adapt to their own conflictual problems. Therapy process, results of the scales. Alliance and transference. Comparing time series data is often difficult and confusing. We chose to smooth the data set to create an approximating function that attempts to capture important patterns in the data while leaving out noise. The algorithm chosen was the moving average of 3 sessions. The results are depicted in figures 1 for alliance and 2 for transference. 2 significant episodes of alliance ruptures and resolutions are analyzed more fully based on the raw data of alliance as rated by the patient. See figure 2. 1. Sessions 4, 5, and 6. 2. Sessions 21, 22, and 23. Psychodynamic characteristics. Overall defensive functioning, ODF, tends to increase within each of the significant moments. At moment 1, ODF evolves from 4.28 to 4.87, both in the narcissistic range of defensive functioning. At moment 2, similarly, ODF evolves from 4.53 to 4.92, also narcissistic range. Note that these are micro evolutions on the overall coefficient of defensive functioning. They were not tested statistically, but they are illustrated using the clinical material. The Core Conflictual Relationship Theme showed a high level of negativity for Julia on the 6 sessions analyzed. We found in particular the rupture sessions, sessions 4 and 21, to be associated with high negativity scores from the CCRT perspective, 100% of negativity for RO and RS. The CCRT of resolution sessions, in particular the last of the chosen triads, i.e. sessions 6 and 23, present a lower level of negativity, which is associated with positive outcome in different psychotherapy studies. In conclusion, over the 2 episodes chosen, alliance rupture sessions tend to present lower, i.e. less adaptive, defensive functioning and higher conflictuality in Julia, whereas the subsequent sessions of rupture resolution tend to present slightly more adapted ways of defensive functioning and a lower conflictuality in Julia.